Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. I'm Becky, I'm the Owlet. I talk all things travel, cruises and a little bit of being plus size, but today I'm a little bit rounder, half a shade darker and a whole lot happier, so that can only mean one thing: I've been on a cruise. So in my last video I talked to you about booking my first post-pandemic cruise and all of the things that I was a little bit apprehensive about, things that would be different or not as good or would just lead to the magic of cruising not being there post-pandemic. So I thought today it could be interesting to have a look back at that video, go through the same topics and update you on all of the things that I spoke about to see if I was right. Spoiler alert, I'm smiling, so clearly not. I will link that last video up in the eye or in the description for you if you're a mobile user. So go and have a watch of that first and then come back here and we will chat. The first thing I was nervous about was probably most of the point of the video in my mind, and that was the COVID test. I worked myself up something chronic and I was a little bit of a mess by the time we even arrived at the cruise terminal, and let me tell you, I felt like an idiot. So at this point I've done a couple of lateral flow tests at home. They're not painful, they're just really uncomfortable, and I personally really struggle with the feeling. I had a lot of nosebleeds growing up as a kid, I still get them now, and every time I do a lateral flow test I feel like I'm about to have a really bad nosebleed. So I get so nervous before them. Everyone said that the lateral flow tests at the port weren't going to be as bad, but in my mind they were going to be just as bad, possibly worse because somebody does it to you rather than you doing it yourself. Oh wow, was I wrong. The lateral flow test at the port was so much better than anything I've experienced before. It's like a 2 or maybe 3-inch cotton bud, or what do Americans call them? Cotton swabs? Yeah. It doesn't go up into your nose at all, they just swab around the entrance of your nostril on both sides for about 5 seconds each side, and then they're done, that's it. It wasn't painful, it wasn't even uncomfortable, if anything it slightly tickled, but honestly that was just nothing. I don't think I spoke about this in the video, but I was also really nervous about the process of going to get tested rather than just the test itself, because I'd heard that it was really disorganised, nobody knew what was going on, and it was just chaos. Couldn't have been further from the truth. I think people on the internet just like a moan. I mean, I know they do, but honestly, they wound me up so well. If your cruise line like Princess is a test at the terminal, then if you're in a car, you have a drive-through centre that you can go into. We got the train down, so we counted as a walk up, so whether you get the train and walk over or get a taxi or whatever, you have to go to the arrivals hall. You will then be directed to a walk-in COVID test centre. I think the test took like 5 minutes, granted that we were in the first boarding group, but we were the only people in there, so if you can, I would recommend either dump your car somewhere and walk to the port or whatever, but the walk-in test centre, from what I gather, was so much quicker than the drive-through test centre. Highly recommend. So once you've had your COVID test, you go into the terminal, you do like a first stage of check-in, and then you go and sit down and wait for your test, which this was the only thing that didn't really make a lot of sense to me, because what if you test positive, then you've already come into contact with like 4 different people guiding you through the terminal, and then you stood face to face, granted with masks on, but you stood face to face talking to somebody who's started the check-in process, so that when you get your COVID test result, assuming it's negative, all you have to do is go and show your passport, collect your medallion, go through security and board. I don't know, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. The one thing I will say is that they were so hot on disinfection, so every time somebody stood up from the waiting area once they got their negative test, even though they'd tested negative and gone to board, somebody came along and sprayed disinfectant along the seats and all over the fabric of the seats and everything, which I have never seen anybody go to that length before to protect people from COVID. So yeah, COVID test, nothing to worry about, absolutely no need to work yourself up, doesn't hurt, doesn't even feel uncomfortable, you barely feel it. It took us 15 minutes to get our test results and we were on board in less than half an hour. On to our next point, which is the app. And I feel like I kind of slated it in the previous video, but I also don't think that it was entirely undeserved. I have had hell with that app. I had to ring Princess Cruises to be like, I can't check in, I've tried everything, I don't know what to do, and they were like, it's fine, you can check in at port, it will just take a little bit longer. which was totally fine. And then we were sailing on the Tuesday morning, and Monday afternoon the app finally decided to let me check in. I don't know why, I don't know how I fixed it, it just decided to work. But it is important to note that if you can't check in, it's not a big deal. Princess said that they will just do it for you at port. Having absolutely slated the app pre-boarding, once I got on board, I was so impressed. So I did make sure to take a couple of screenshots so that I could show you around the app, so I'll put these up here. Obviously you've got your functionality of being able to order cocktails and room service, well, food to wherever you are on the ship. The cocktail menu was fairly limited, which meant if you wanted to order anything more special, more unique, a bit more complex, you had to wait for somebody to come and take your order, which in most bars wasn't an issue, but in a couple of bars, the Vista Lounge was amazing, but there was a really popular band there, and so the poor barmen were run off of their feet. We had the choice of ordering just a glass of wine or a very basic cocktail, and there weren't really any on the app I liked, or waiting potentially an hour plus to get a drink. In terms of the food section, for me it was a little tricky to navigate. So if you don't follow me on social media, then you might not know I can't eat gluten, and there was pretty much no dietary information on the app whatsoever. We went to order room service one evening because we'd had a really early dinner, and by this point it was like nearly midnight and we were kind of peckish. Well, no, to be honest, we just wanted to order room service because we could. So Jack ordered some cheesy chips, which you'd think would just be cheese and chips. Luckily I didn't want that, and I ordered tacos because I thought I can just scrape the middle out and just eat that, it's fine. So cheesy chips you'd think would be gluten-free. They arrived and they had a cheese sauce on instead of just grated cheese, which meant it had gluten in it. But then my tacos arrived and they were in a corn shell, not a flour tortilla shell, which meant they were gluten-free. I mean, if you're really badly allergic to gluten, I wouldn't apply my logic. I would actually ring room service and check. But I'm at the level of gluten intolerant where if I eat something with gluten in, I know about it. But if it's just a little bit, then I can get away with it. For the sake of not causing hassle, I was like, it'll be fine. Form of dietary information would have been wonderful. I don't expect a detailed list of all of the allergens, but just add a little gluten-free or dairy-free label and just make my life easier, please. Outside of ordering food and drinks, you could order all sorts of different things. So I was sat having a drink and waiting for Meridian, the Vista Lounge band, to start, and I thought, I wonder if ordering an extra pillow would make it better, because they were feather and I'm sure they were high quality, but the second you lean on them they just go like that. So I ordered a third pillow to my cabin through the app, and when I got there it was not only just on the bed, but neatly presented on the bed ready for us. Other functionalities of the app that I really didn't expect but absolutely came into their own. They have like a GPS system on board. So the medallion tracks your location on board the ship and does really cool things, like a barman will come up and remember your favourite drink. I never had to order a glass of wine at dinner after the second night. I arrived and my wine arrived shortly after without even being asked if I'd like a glass, which was lovely. When you walk into a restaurant or a bar, you will also be greeted by your name, which I just thought was a lovely personal touch. One of the most amazing things that I found from the app was the kind of GPS sat-nav technology that having the medallion and the app on your phone gives you. So I could open the app on my phone and just click on whatever bar or restaurant or whatever I wanted to go to and click get me there, and it would give you set out instructions like you were using Google Maps. I think I mentioned this in my last video, but you can also track anybody that your booking is linked with on the ship. So Jack was in the Vista Lounge, I had to go to guest services, and I could see where he was sat in the Vista Lounge, and it just made it so much easier because I wasn't walking in the dark in the middle of this band going, where is he sat? Where is my cocktail? So the app really came into its own during the cruise. There were still occasions where it went a bit buggy. So on multiple occasions during the cruise, I got logged out of the app and I had to try and log back in, and then it wouldn't work, and then it would randomly log me back in again and it would be fine. On board the ship, everything was solved by just closing the app and opening it again and waiting a few seconds and it was fine. please Princess, please make it so that I can complete the check-in process on the website. In that case, I would give the app 10 out of 10. I just don't want to do the check-in process again. The third point I was concerned about in my last video, I'm actually so excited to talk about. I said I was concerned about the atmosphere because obviously we have been told to stay away from people for the last year and a half, and I didn't think that that was going to go away anytime soon. And one of the things that I loved about being on ships was making friends with people and chatting and having a laugh. I stepped on board and I feel like I stepped back in time by 2 years. I can't help but smile as I'm talking about this because it was just magical. Everything that I wanted and hoped for that I didn't think would be there was. So obviously you have to test aboard, and then you still have to social distance and wear masks on the ship because you may have come into contact with COVID, you know, the day before you board or on your travels down, so you can never be 100% sure, so that's absolutely fine. But I did think that that would feed into an atmosphere of, you know, stay away from me, you might be diseased. Not in the slightest. So one of the issues that I did find was that even though the ship was only at half capacity, and I guess this is partially because of reduced events and not being able to get off in ports, this may not be as much of an issue for you, but I did find that overcrowding was something that we struggled with despite the ship being at half capacity. So we couldn't get a sun lounger for love nor money, and there was so many you didn't think it would be an issue, but unless you wanted to be in the cold right at the top by the funnel, it wasn't going to happen. We were walking around one day, couldn't find any sun loungers at all, so we thought, okay, we'll just go and sit at one of the tables by the bar, and then I can leave Jack there because he wanted to read, and I can just go and get a towel and swim and then come back there. As I was going to get a towel, I saw somebody moving from their sunbeds, so I went over to them and asked if they needed them anymore. She was like, no, of course, they're all yours. So I was a little bit cheeky and I said, would you mind just staying there for like 2 seconds? My boyfriend's just over the other side at one of the tables. I'll go grab him and come back. And she was like, yeah, no worries at all. And she'd started to move her glasses and things for us. And so she put them back on the table and sat down at the sunbed while I went and got Jack. And by the time I came back, she'd actually turned the sunbeds round so that we were facing the sea screen in case we wanted to watch whatever was on, which was just so kind, and my mind was so blown. So this was just another passenger that wanted to be helpful and really kind. Those moments of kindness are the exact thing that I was expecting to not be on board post-pandemic. It was an incredible environment. I got to know some of the crew really well, got to chat with them on a daily basis. I also kept bumping into the same guests and getting on really well with them. It was just everything that I wanted and didn't expect to be there. If you, like me, were worried about the atmosphere, you don't need to be at all. It was incredible and I can't stop smiling. It was just magical. The last thing I mentioned that I was a little bit concerned about, I don't feel like I was entirely wrong, and that is the events on board. And obviously this is my first time sailing Princess, so I have nothing to compare it to. Was there plenty to do on board? Yes. Were things notable by their absence? Yes. So when we got on board there was a sail away, but it was strangely quite short-lived compared to other sailaways that I've experienced. So there was, I think, a 10 or 15 minute performance and then that was it. Whereas the other cruise lines I've been used to, they make it like an hour-long thing where you have music playing and you've got the entertainment team kind of hyping everyone up, and then you've got a performance, and then you have sail away, and then it's like a little bit of a party afterwards. I don't know if that's just the Princess way to have a more subdued sail away or if it was because of COVID, but it was a little bit underwhelming if I'm being brutally honest. Obviously there was no captain's welcome reception, which is completely understandable obviously given the circumstances, but I did miss it. Having said that, Princess worked very hard to find things to fill the gaps. So there was loads of entertainment. There was a band called Meridian that we loved going to see every night. There was an amazing piano player. There was a guitarist that we loved going to see. So we were never stuck for things to do in the evening. It was clear that there was probably something there before, but they'd filled the gaps so well that you didn't miss it. The only thing I will say is there was a weird lull between about 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. every single day of our cruise, where we got to this point of, I don't really know what to do. There were a couple of days of really nice weather, so we were happy to just relax by the pool and go for a swim. On one of the more cloudy days, we actually checked out some sports equipment and played basketball, which was really fun. We didn't play a proper game of it, obviously it was just the two of us, but we just did some free throws and generally laughed at how bad we were. We also tried to play ping pong, but it was really windy. And that's not a thing that you play on the top deck of a ship, let me tell you that. I don't know if that's more of a princess thing of making your own entertainment, being expected to sit down and read a book, but it would have been nice for something to be there, to have the option of something to do, even if it was just somebody playing some music on the pool deck. That would have been lovely. And that did happen a few times, but it was only for like an hour. To be honest, we wanted a relaxing cruise and I wanted to go and take some photos for Instagram and my blog. If you're not following me, it's here. So that lull worked quite well for us, but it would have been nice to have the option of something to do. I was also gutted because they didn't parade the baked Alaska, which is totally understandable because of social distancing and that, it doesn't really work. But it's not going to stop me being any less disappointed, because that's one of the best and cringiest things about a cruise ship. So in summary, I was wrong about almost everything. The test was totally fine, the atmosphere was incredible, the app was so much better once we were on board. The events were pretty good, but room for improvement. But all in all, pretty amazing first cruise back. The magic is still very much there, very happy, very thankful to have been on board. Every single crew member and guest made it the most incredible and most special experience I could have possibly asked for. Anyway, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Go check out my channel for lots of other videos. A subscribe would be very much appreciated. Quick apology, there was no video last week because I edit all of my videos on iMovie on that desktop, which means that you can't take it with you, and to be honest, even if I could, I wouldn't have wanted to, and I ran out of time to edit. So the next video you see will be possibly the final instalment of my Azura series, and then, spoiler alert, I filmed some princess vlogs, so those will be coming out soon. But for now, thank you for spending time with me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Check me out on my social media. I will chat to you there, and I will see you back here soon. Bye! I know I said I was done filming, but I'm not. I just logged into my Instagram and found a question from one of you, so I just thought I would quickly tack it onto the end of this video because it's strangely relevant talking about my concerns of post-COVID cruising. So it says that they're nervous about viruses that circulate on cruise ships like sickness, for example, because they've been worried since everyone got stuck on the ship at the start of the pandemic. That is a very fair and valid concern in some respects, but also I don't think it's a thing you need to worry about. Certainly not about getting COVID on board anyway. Norovirus has been an issue on ships for as long as I can remember. That's why cruise ships have had sanitisation stations and things like that long before the pandemic. Unfortunately, there were always people that would walk past the sanitisation stations and just ignore it and refuse to. I don't really understand why, but they did. That's why norovirus would spread, because if you're not sanitising your hands and then you're touching banisters and everything, as much as they would be given a daily clean down, if you touch them in between, then you could possibly get sick. I have actually been on a cruise when norovirus made its way on board. I personally didn't get sick, and in my opinion they did an incredible job of controlling it. They would spray down the ship with disinfectant every single night. There would be people constantly walking around and disinfecting the banisters and handrails and any kind of high touch areas, and the buffet went from serving yourself to somebody serving it to you. If you saw on land, the flu virus spread a lot less last year because of the steps that we were taking to control coronavirus. Don't quote me on this, but I think we might see a similar thing on board ships with norovirus. Whereas before, the sanitisation stations were out and there for you to use and crew would encourage you, now you are stopped and asked to wash your hands and or sanitise at every single entrance to any venue. Every time I walked around the ship I would see at least 3 people in just one area wiping down handrails or banisters or any high touch areas like lift buttons. So I think it is quite likely that we will see less norovirus cases, because as people we are suddenly so much more aware of the germs that we carry on our hands, and the crew are so much more insistent of you washing your hands and making sure that you're protecting everybody at all times, because obviously coronavirus. The thing that really annoys me is how cruise ships were portrayed at the start of the pandemic. In my opinion, cruise ships were really unfairly scapegoated and painted as like plague ships, when there were so many other places that were having really bad outbreaks of COVID and didn't know how to control it. The thing with norovirus is that a lot of the transmission came through touching contaminated surfaces. So things like wiping down high touch areas, asking everybody to sanitize their hands and being more strict about it would help norovirus. Obviously for COVID you need to social distance and you need to be wearing masks. That's not a thing that you do for norovirus. Obviously they didn't have masks on board because pre-2020 nobody needed masks on board a cruise ship. I completely understand the worry of getting sick on board a ship. In all honesty, COVID cases are still happening on cruise ships. I'm sure norovirus cases are probably still happening on cruise ships. But given the amount of ships that are sailing again, I can only think of a very, very small number of cases. I honestly don't think that getting sick on board or getting stuck on board because somebody else got sick is something that you particularly need to worry about. Obviously, you know, take precautions, wear a mask, constantly wash your hands, sanitize everywhere you go. But as long as you're careful, I don't think it's a thing you need to particularly worry about. So I'm sorry that was long and rambly. I hope that answers your question. If not, obviously feel free to message me on Instagram again and we can chat further. I'm happy to allay your fears or answer any questions that you have. Equally, if you're not the person that answered the question, also feel free to message me on Instagram. I'm always happy to chat cruises, answer any questions you have, and I will talk to you later. Bye!